I got a question I'd like to ask. This building, the school lot, expired in about a year, 20 years. That was $3 million, because you got $6 million from the state for, so we've been paying the $3 million, that's pretty gone in a couple of years. Right? So if you go to $12 million for 20 more years, is this not the block up of taxes on the bond, and it falls under the same pocket, whether it's levy, excess levy, or a building bond, it's still in my tax rate. Am I correct?
What we're showing you, though, Stuart, is if it's a vote on question 1 and 2, to support both question 1 and 2, if I will, it's a 22-cent impact. If you own a $100,000 house in Elbow Lake, that's your annual tax increase, period.
I'm going to lose the $3 million in 2 years. That's going to be lost because it was zero. With nothing happens. The building's just paid for, right?
Right. But we're still going to have to come back to you somewhere down the line and ask you to support a higher operating referendum because we can't maintain 3 buildings.
Exactly.
The tax impact between bond and levy is, you know,
It's all the same pocket, yeah.
It's not completely because it's
the tax impact, and this is a breakdown. Again, I'm looking at Mike and Matt, that if we look back to last summer and we were talking about option 3 was continuing to keep all 3 campuses open and a $7.3 million bond, right? And okay, let me finish doing it as far as the tax breakdown. The tax breakdown on that $100,000 home, now at that time, was $363, minus the legislative change, okay? But at that time, the tax impact of both of those 2 things, the bond and the operating levy, was $363. The impact for that, breakdown of that for the bond was $3.97, and the operating was $359.39. So the majority is the operating. The bond is very minimal. Okay? So you talk about having it come out of one pocket, that is absolutely true. But it's the operating that is more. Okay? The operating is more. Now,
so the bond currently, Stuart, and I apologize, I don't know that your name's Stuart, but you've been called Stuart a couple times, so I just Mr. Stewart, the bond equivalent to the $338 or $360 range that we were working with the operating levy, that bond equivalent on that $100,000 home is $35. The trick that a few of them, excellent question. So if everybody didn't hear that question, the question is, what's the difference, I'll paraphrase, what's the difference between the 2 tax bases and how do they affect question 1 and question 2? We have 2 tax, the first piece of this is levy is for learning, bond is for building. So the levy for learning is on what they call a referendum tax base. The bond referendum is on a net tax capacity tax base. So the levy for learning excludes all seasonal rec property and any agricultural acreage beyond 1 acre, and it also excludes a portion of a disabled veteran's home. Those are the 3 major categories of what portion of your tax base is not taxed. The bond issue is spread across all taxable parcels and each one of those taxable parcels may be taxed at a different, what the legislators refer to as a class rate. So a homestead residential has a 1% class rate for the first 500,000. Agricultural land has a 0.5 or half percent, 0.5 or 0.55, I'd have to look at the calculation quick, for that ag land up to the first $1,290,000 in valuation. A commercial industrial property is almost double what a house pays. So on a bond, a building or bond, everybody pays slightly different tax rates. Your utilities pay something different than your homeowners. On an operating levy, every $100,000 worth of property pays the same amount. So a $100,000 business would pay the same amount as a $100,000 homeowner. Same with a farmstead where the dwelling value is $100,000, they would pay the same amount as the person in town. Does that help, ma'am?
Can I simplify even an understanding? It's good to know the difference, but
Can you do the microphone
Yeah,
for the group?
I'd just like to simplify the way I understand the situation, because you get confusing between the levy and the bond. If we were to consolidate the schools into Barrett, that would be a savings of $657,000. Is that correct? But on an annual basis, the debt servicing between the $12 million bond to consolidate the $7 million bond would be about $400,000 is in our calculations on an annual basis. So you save $650,000, but then on an annual basis, you have to pay $400,000 approximately more. So the difference in savings on a macro level is only $250,000. And your assumption that you lose 40 students, that right there at $6,000 pop approximately is $240,000 there. So to me, if we were to consolidate on an annual basis, we'd have no savings if we lose 40 students. I don't know if that's correct. Can you help me out in that thought process?
Sir, you're missing one leg of that stool. And the leg of the stool is that if you maintain all three campuses, for practical purposes to be at a place with your fund balance in 5 to 10 years where you would be with this plan, you need to raise an additional $1 million per year through an additional operating levy. So you're forgetting when you do the 7.5, yes, there's a $400,000 difference, but there's also between the payments, but you chew up that with another $1 million worth of school district collection to run all three campuses.
What I'm saying, savings-wise, it's pretty, in my statement, they're pretty even, so why don't we just increase the operating levy, because we're obviously paying more money for the bond on an annual basis. If we want to keep the free school, that's what I see.
We'll try to graph or put something together beyond this meeting to hopefully lay that out for further scrutiny.
I know it sounds like that would be the simple, that's how it should be, but that's truly not how it is. And if everybody thinks that school finance is the same as your business, it's truly not. No.
About 30 years down the road, though. We talk about, what he wants to be in the community now. In 30 years, if you have 3 schools, what is your expenses going to be for those 3 schools? I don't know what's going to happen in 30 years. Crystal ball? No, I'm asking you because you were asking the difference between keeping 3 schools or building 1 new school.
Well, for the 2 schools, to north and south would be $7.5 million. That's what you projected, right? In your crystal ball.
Plus additional staff.
To do some upgrades if we were going to maintain those.
Right.
Yes.
Now, have you budgeted for deferred MA on the new school?
I'm sorry, what?
Will you be back for levy money for learning for the deferred maintenance on the new school?
No, with question 2 passing, that carries us out.
On the bond?
No. Question 2 is the operating levy. That is replacing or revoking and replacing.
But all your numbers are based on the levy not being renewed.
No.
No, they're not.
They're showing up there with the levy being renewed, and it gets us to 17 or 18, and then we do this.
Pat, we do not
And what I would-
understand the increase in expenses, or the increase in expenses to take us from 1.5 million surplus to a negative fund in 3 years with the extension of the current referendum. We don't understand that. Am I correct?
Yes.
Right.
That's our problem. Explain it.
When we go, where is that slide?
The reason, Pat, you go to the slide.
And again, you know, we talk about the compounding, you know, if your expenditure's going up to 2%, you know, and
Bear with me, I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Mike.
While Pat's looking for one of the charts that will assist us in the visual, I have to go back to, if the district has 7.7 million, or let's call it $8 million expenditures next year, and let's say for ease, in my mind, that grows 200,000 a year. So we have 8 million, 8.2, 8.4, 8.6. So we're somewhere between 8.6 and 8.8 million of expenditures, and we have 7.7 million of revenue in 4 to 5 years. We're 1.1 million. That's how we crash this.
Has that
And
been the trend?
when we get out there, if we don't find more efficiencies, when we get out there, that's how we go from 42,000. The compounding effect bottoms us out to the 1.6. Now, if you look at the blue, the red certainly is, as several people pointed out, you only calculated without renewing the levy. The light blue, as Mr. Weston pointed out before, that light blue is if the referendum does pass, if the operating referendum passes. So that light blue goes from I'm going to call it 1.5 from this angle, to 1.3 to 715,000. We cross the expenditure line much greater than revenues clearly in year 16, 17, if we're keeping on the same path.
No more money.
So he asked you
After next year, correct?
Correct. That is flat funding from the state after next year's increase.
No more money.
And I think that's an easy thing to say, Marissa, that keep asking us for more money. But you also have to realize that we're trying to be mindful of all the taxpayers in our communities. I mean, we've got, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm guessing it's fairly high percentage of people that are on fixed incomes that live within our district. We have to be mindful of all of these individuals when we're making these decisions. And I think we try to do that.
Can you
But
go?
if you go out and talk to them and listen to them. I just visited with, people in Kensington on fixed income. They're willing to pay. They're willing to pay.
And we've heard it time and again, when we're out holding these meetings, we're done, this is it.
That's not what you heard in Kensington. That's not what you heard in Double Lake. That's not what you heard in
If we use some of the things that Daryl's referring to, and my tenure with this school district, don't wreck your heel. We asked for in 2009 $300 per pupil unit more for an operating budget. We failed it miserably. We would be doubling your current operating levy.
Did people know about it though? Some of this stuff happens under the radar and people don't know it. You can't just assume that people don't want it.
I've been on the board now for 9 years, and I've worked on 5 referendum campaigns. 2 of them have passed. We have gone to every community. I've gone to Lions meetings, I've gone to city council meetings, I've gone to firemen's meetings. It's not easy. It's almost impossible, and it's draining. I mean, it's exhausting to run a referendum campaign every 2 to 3 years. It's exhausting. When we can make a difference, it's not an easy decision that we made. It was impossible. We all sat at the board table and went, oh my gosh, really, really? And then we looked at the numbers and we said, our voters need to know about this. They need to know what we're seeing. Because if we don't tell them, 2 years from now, they're gonna come to us and they're gonna say, well, if you would have told us this, maybe we could have done something differently. We had meetings in every community this summer, all 5 communities. We begged people, call us, let us know what your decision is. Let us know what you want to know. I live in Elbow Lake. I got 0 phone calls. I got 0 emails.
Everybody at that meeting told you we didn't want to.
Not everybody at that meeting did.
Again,
You're not
be
listening to
respectful
them.
of everyone.
Give them respect.
Please. Go ahead, Derek.
I would have to get some, the older people, I wasn't around when the school was built, here is secondary school. But I'd like to know I'm having a real hard time believing your projections out 20 years, 10 years. When all I hear around town was, well, this is what all the stuff they told us when you're gonna build a school. They'll never be back for another referendum if you build this school. So, in 5 years, they'll all be out in there. So,
But I would tell you right now, Darren, that a lot has changed legislatively that we have no control over.
how can you project out 10 years now if you don't know what's gonna change? I mean,
It's like anything. You work with the numbers that you have and the best information that you currently have available. And that's as good as you can do, whether it's your own business, whether it's the school, whatever it might be. That's what we all try to do, even with your own business.
Have you as a board considered the aspect of bullying that could take place?
I think we have, yeah, and I think, I don't know that you could say 1 building would be worse than 3 buildings. Quite honestly, I don't know how you could possibly say that bullying would be less or bullying would be more.
Plus, Chris, we could increase it, like putting it on entry and around the lake, there.
Right now, we have elementary kids riding shuttle buses with the older kids too, as we transfer them.
You could be transferring more than close all the way to
I'd like to believe that the kids that we have in our district they're good kids, people. I don't think that any kindergartner or any first grader that's getting on a bus with an older student is going to feel threatened. I don't.
Most of our neighbors are K-12 schools. Ashby, Minnewaska, Herman, Morris.
They never consolidated about bullying. Teach your child respect and how to be a good kid. To teach them the right thing. So then you do it. It's not on the school to do all of it. Teach your child to be a good kid.
What is the planned addition going to consist of as far as a cafeteria, gym, classrooms?
Okay. The planned addition, what is, the question was, what is the planned addition? Certainly going to have its own cafeteria. We've utilized the kitchen here and have the cafeteria for all our K through 5, pre-K through 5 kids to eat. You asked a question of why wouldn't we use this cafeteria? We would need to start serving kids way early in the morning for that to happen, to get everybody through. So own cafeteria, also own cafeteria/gym space for the K-5. The other part was classrooms. What do we have in there, Pat? 12 K through 5, 15 classrooms, 3 sections each. Okay. So.
Yeah, there are currently 15 classrooms planned for grades 1 through 5, as well as kindergarten and early childhood in addition to
Head Start.
Pre-K. Yep.
One of my concerns with this meeting is whenever we ask anything about new schools, well, we didn't figure that in, when you've already automatically assumed that you're getting a new one. How can we as voters be informed if you guys already made up your mind and you didn't figure out any of the numbers with the old building?
Exactly.
As a former student of South Elementary, I believe that running two buildings is more advantageous because our communities will suffer as much as our students. Comments on that?
And probably some of you have heard this story from me before too, you know, and as we talk about how the community would suffer if the school building is closed. I'm going to relate a little story to you. I graduated from Herman in the late 70s, and at that time, there was a drugstore, there was 2 grocery stores, there was a jewelry store, there was 2 car dealerships, there was 2 restaurants, a couple of bars, there was 2 grain elevators, 4 gas stations, I believe, 2 implement dealerships, did I say that? And a host of other things that were going on. There was a body shop. Right now, Herman still operates a K through 12 school. And probably about 70% of those businesses are no longer there. And I don't believe it's because the school is still running that they've left.
If K-4 enrollment would increase, how large would the classes become before you would split them from 3 sections to 4?
That's a question we battle with right now, all the time. You know, you saw up in that earlier graph we have class sizes of 14 and 14. So that means and this board has been extremely supportive of small class sizes. So obviously 28 was split into was split into 2 sections, okay? Now, please don't say that 28 is the magic number. We do that on a year-by-year classroom or class-by-class basis, based on student needs. And so, given that that graph that I had up there earlier regarding the class sizes, our largest class size in any one grade level, I believe, was 24, right? And with 3 sections, that particular grade could stand to increase, if we use 25 or 26 as the magic number, you could increase, 6 kids in that particular grade level before the class gets to that 26 or whatever the magic number is. And so I think that issue or that challenge is as it is now. We continue to battle that. And we hear both sides of that issue too, folks. 28 kids in a class, you can have that, except for the parents of those kids in that 28. We hear on the other side, there's no way you can have 28 kids in a class. And so, we battle that now, and I don't think that would be any different.
Has the school board and administration hired any consultants who are experts in education to provide consultation as to what is in the best interest of our children? Or do you think ICS, a company that focuses on construction, would be best able to address education issues?
We hired ICS to look at our facilities, okay? I would like to think that Mr. Ronstadt and Mrs. Suki and our staff, the people that work with our kids every day are the people that tell us what needs to happen as far as education is concerned.
With the new levy authority, formula based on pupils served caused a proposal savings of $650,000. To erode even faster, there is a large loss of students from the fringes of the district due to the proposed decision to close the 2 elementary schools in Kensington and Elbow Lake.
I think if I'm understanding right, but we did show the one graph all being in one campus, and we did show a decrease in 40 students, I believe, right? Even then, our fund balance at that point was still about 2.1 million, I believe.
Mr. Weston showed a graph, he said the new funding formula is based on pupils
served,
Correct.
not pupils in the district.
That is correct.
So therefore, if there was a decrease in enrollment due to students on the brink, which my kids are one of those,
Mhm.
and due to logistics, I'm probably 2 of the 40 kids.
Mhm.
Does that cause even a faster sort of snowball effect of the $650,000 in savings going away based on the new formula you talked about?
Does the savings dwindle so it goes from 650 and down? Be based because of the levy?
You said in one of the slides that the current funding is based on pupils or students in the district.
Serve the ones that we're serving, yep.
The ones that we're serving or that are part of the district?
No, that was the old formula, was resident students. Whether they went to resident, they live in our district, but they may or may not come to our school. That's resident
Are
district.
we currently under what formula?
Pupils served in our, this last,
This coming year.
yep.
So it's going to happen.
Mhm.
It's part of this number, this levy being certified. So the gentleman in the front asked, when is this taking place, where we're moving from a student formula based on who lives in your district to students served? This levy that will be certified in December of 2013, the taxes payable 14, will be the first time that we will be under those new legislative rules that were passed this spring and summer. The impact, if we run down the left-hand side again, the impact in the 17-18 school year would be the 2.6 million, the second row from the bottom, to the 2.3 million. So that has a $300,000 impact. Now, if you lost those same students, the question might be back at you, if you lost those same students under both scenarios, what would happen? You would have less of an impact running a single campus than you would 3 campuses. But yes, it will have an impact. It won't decrease the amount of savings, but it will have an impact on the amount of revenue, that $7.7 million that the school district is generating right now.
How many students annually will the new question will impact? How many students annually will that new liable? Because, you know, if you go back to Herman and Senate, you can find it. If you go back to years ago, the plans there.
In Glenwood, it was about 20 years ago, if I remember right, too.
What is Herman's enrollment right now? Herman's right now running a 1-section class,
About 100 kids.
and it's anywhere from 9
kids to 12,
to
period.
13 kids a section.
No, I'm saying how many kids do we think or
I think you'd have to be
I think
probably cut in half just
think
from a macro level view. You'd have to, your number of kids, I believe you're almost at the median size district in the entire state. I think you're right there at about 740 kids per out of the 331 districts.
And I think I'm going to ask Mr. Westby to just allude about this a little bit also, but I know we've talked that, you know, if the taxpayers aren't going to be supportive of continuing to operate a higher levy for, you know, learning, and they say, you know what, that's enough. And now we have to start cutting programs because, quite honestly, at $650,000 that it's going to cost to operate the 3 campuses versus 1, we got to find those savings somewhere if you're not going to continue to support that higher levy. And so once we start talking about cutting programs or you know, higher class sizes and whatnot, and I know you want to talk about, you know, the kids that come once they get their license, you know, those kids are a lot more mobile and will leave for less of a reason than the little kids that are just coming into the school.
You know, Zach, you and I visited about that on Friday. As far as, you know, sir, you in the front here talked about logistically, it works for their family to go to X district. Okay, I'm going to step aside here and just be on a personal level. We have 2 kids, and if for whatever reason we wanted our kids to leave West Central area, it absolutely would not work for us logistically to get them to whatever district that chose. We live in Elbow Lake, Ashby, Fergus, Alexandria, Brandon, Evansville, etc., etc. It wouldn't work for us logistically to get our children to school and get them back. Okay? Now, in a couple of years, our children are going to be driving, help us all. And when that happens, if we are going to be starting to reduce programming here at the secondary school and reducing those elective classes, I know where my passion, or where the passion of my 2 kids lie. And if some of those things are gone because we need to continue to reduce, to continue to operate, they're going to get in a car and they're going to drive. And it's not going to affect us as mom and dad logistically one bit. They're going to get there, they're going to get back. It's not going to help us, or it's not going to hurt us, okay? As a family now. And so at the board level, we have those conversations about our juniors and seniors are very mobile people. Much more mobile than when I was growing up. I know that if I would have told my dad that I'm going to go to school in someplace else, he would have laughed and said, no, you're not. But kids, our juniors and seniors, are going to go where they find the passions or the programs that they want to have. So we have a feeling, and whether it's right or wrong, we have a feeling that our juniors and seniors are much more mobile than our kindergartners and first graders. Of course, not for all, because for some families it works logistically. We have families now that live in our district that work elsewhere and bring their children to another school district because it works for them logistically. Okay? And so we have to try to balance that.
The presentation does a good job of laying out the advantages. What are the disadvantages?
It's a good question. Disadvantages? I think all of you have outlined those disadvantages to us very well. Right? You have outlined the impact that it may or may not have on communities. You've outlined those for us. I would say that's a disadvantage. Guys, I think there's again, I'm gonna step aside just a little bit here. I don't think there's anyone, and certainly you can disagree with me on this, but there isn't anyone in this room that sets out to say, let's close north or south or both. There's nobody in favor of that. But I also look at these numbers, and you know, we work with people that work with this and help us with that. And when we look at that and we look out, that scares me. Here's what scares me, folks, as a dad, as an employee, is that A, our taxpayers say no to this proposed plan. B, say no to an increased levy plan. And that'll be a very clear message to us, saying, folks, we're telling you to operate 3 facilities, and we need you to do it without any increased revenue. Okay? Now, we're hearing people say, ask us for more money. Again, we're going to go back to 2010, and that was difficult. And so what scares me, again, as an educator and as a dad, is that we are going to be asked to run and continue to operate 3 facilities without any increased revenue, and then that's difficult.
In
That's a good
2010,
thing.
we were coming off of a severe economic downturn. So I don't think we can always look back at 2010 and say we narrowly passed it. We were all broke. We all were. It's
Yep.
different. Are you speaking for everyone? Everyone's gonna have money now because not everyone. They better, they gotta spend $30 million in the next 20 years. Well,
Have you talked?
Or we're gonna have to spend $40 million to fix the schools. Yeah. That is not fair.
Have you talked with the city of Barrett on whether they can handle the expansion of this size without putting a heavy burden on their citizens?
Heavy burden, I'm not sure of it. Have we talked to the city? No. Again, we rely on ICS and looking at our infrastructure as to what is capable, what we're able to handle. I don't believe there'd be any burden on the citizens or taxpayers of Barrett.
As far as I know the water tower, that was upgraded. I know the city sewer down to the wastewater treatment, that was also upgraded at that time. So I don't know what it was upgraded to handle what sort of capacity, but I don't think that's an issue.
I heard that 55% capacity now is good system. If you add kids and any other goal, it will be capacity to take it up to another one. Which is all of that is there.
Have you considered and are you concerned about closing the elementary school, about the closing elementary schools, how they will impact the economies of Kensington and Apple Lake, and how that in turn would potentially impact enrollment and tax income to the school?
And I think we've kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in the evening too. I don't think as a board that, we feel that it's our job, quite honestly, for, to do the economic development of our communities, whether it's Wendell, whether it's Hoffman, Kensington, Barrett, or Elm Lake. Our job is to continue to provide opportunities for our kids and to try to do that as cost efficiently as we possibly can, because we know a good portion of the money that we operate on comes from the taxpayers.
We know that early childhood programs are foundational to a child's development. We also can appreciate that the early education programs, Head Start, ECFE, and school readiness are foundational or feeder programs into the kindergarten and elementary and high school grades. How does a proposed central location address the needs of our very young children and their families who will attend the early childhood programs at Elbow Lake and Kensington, especially their transportation challenges in keeping these families in our WCA school district? How are these early childhood programs budgeted into the 12.25 bond?
As far as how they are budgeted into the bond, pre-K is a part of that. So it is budgeted in there. From an educational standpoint, I look at all the advantages of having our pre-K, all our pre-K kids in the same location, whether it be in across the hallway or in the same location as our kindergarten. The planning that I believe that could happen between our pre-K and our K teachers, that, quite honestly, that excites me. That what could happen for our kids in that regard. Now, you had, also part of that question was transportation with our, for our families and those kinds of things. Yep, I'm not sure how to answer that. Certainly that's a concern or a question that we have currently with families getting from Barrett to Elbow, Hoffman to Kensington, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be a continued challenge.
If question 1 regarding the proposed $12.225 million bond does not pass, based on the feedback the school board and administration heard at the summer meetings and has received from residents of the district, what option will they likely bring forth as Plan B?
I don't think that we necessarily know what that would be yet at this point. Certainly after November 5th, I'm guessing our next work meeting, we'd probably come back and say, okay, now what?
What have you heard? I mean, of the 2 remaining options, you have 2 options you brought to us, 3. 2 left. Of those 2, you can't, I have a hard time believing that you guys haven't talked about
I think it really depends upon November 5th. I mean, for example, if our taxpayers, you tell us no, okay, and it's a no of, I'm just going to throw out numbers here, guys, 51% to 49%, okay? That tells us, that's information that's good for us to have. If it tells us no of, 88% to 12%, I think that speaks loudly to our board. I think one of the things that I want to mention here is when the board was interviewing consultants, and ICS was one of them, there was another consultant that had offered a service of going out and doing a phone survey, or what would our taxpayers support. Okay, the board chose not to. Number one, it was a tremendous amount of money to have that survey done. But two, we said, really, the surveys, the ultimate decision or the ultimate thing is on election day, right? I mean, at that point is we truly get the picture. And so going back to your question, I think at that point, we decide at that point what option we pursue next. And we certainly hear both sides. We hear the things that we're hearing tonight, absolutely. We hear things like 22 cents, really? We hear things like, this should have been done. What took you guys so long? It should have been done a long time ago. We hear things like, don't you dare close North and South Elementary. I mean, we hear both sides of that. And so I think in response to what the board, or how the board arrives at decisions, I think they do due diligence, and they listen, and they do their due diligence. That's all I'm going to say next. There.
The Elbow Lake School is not that old. State-of-the-art addition was built. Is it really in that bad of shape? Seems to be parts of the building are empty and being rented out. Would it be possible to put all the elementary in Elbow Lake? If they have to take a bus to Barrett, why not go to Elbow?
Well, I guess if I'm living on the south end, I don't know if I'm thrilled with that, but
part of the question there was, is the buildings in bad shape? I think no. The answer to that is no. Are there things that need to be done to those buildings? There are. Particularly if we are making a decision for the next 20 years and we're going to be in those buildings for the next 20. There are going to be things that need to be done. Are there things that need to be done sooner than later? Yes. I can tell you for a fact that Labor Day weekend, we had a rain like we did today. We had people in the building Saturday night mopping water. I was on the roof on Sunday morning finding the hole where the rain came in. We had Buttweilers here. We were working on repairing that. We spent the rest of Sunday and Monday drying out kindergarten classrooms so they're ready for the first day of school. Okay? Now, I get nervous at a day like today. Okay? So there are going to be things that need to be addressed sooner than later with that. The reason for the proposed plan really centers around the operational and the operating expenses with 3 buildings, as opposed to these 2 buildings are ready to fall down. That's not it at all. Okay? It's the operation expense of continuing to operate 3 facilities with 50 kids. Okay? Share another little story with a former board member who was on the board in 1995 when this was put together. And he said, at that time we felt if we could get 20 years, we will have done our job as a board. Okay? My response to him is, you're certainly going to get 20 years. You're going to get there. Now it's this board's, our responsibility to say, is for the next 20, is it a 3-campus district? Okay, is it a 1-campus district? What's the vision and the long-term plan for our district, knowing what the number of students that we have currently?
There have been complaints about classrooms in the new school in Alexandria being too small. In coming up with the $12.25 million figure, were adequate classroom sizes estimated for?
Pat, I'm going to leave that one to you as far as the square footage.
I guess from a simple answer standpoint, I would say yes. The Minnesota Department of Education has very, I would say, detailed guidelines and standards related to sizes of classrooms, sizes of support spaces, and in essence, it's laid out and it's very prescribed. And so the proposed spaces certainly meet or exceed Department of Education guidelines for Minnesota.
I mean, how do the new classroom size compare to the current ones? Do they be larger, smaller?
The new classrooms here are currently programmed at 900 square feet apiece. I can't recall right now how large the Kensington classrooms are.
Can't recall?
The square footage of classrooms in that specific building, no, I can't right now. I can certainly look to see if I've got it. But
How many teaching positions will be lost, including how many retired or bought out teachers?
Okay, I'm going to make an assumption that if proposal or if question 1 passes, I don't know if that's the intent of the question or not, but that's what I'm going to assume. If we talk about certified staff, that's teachers, administrators, anyone with a license. Right now in the projections, there are 8 positions. The question regards to teachers bought out or retirees, don't know the answer to that. I mean, that's a question that we deal with every spring in regards to resignations, retirements, leaves of absence, teachers leaving our district for any of those 3 reasons, and we staff accordingly. Now, you saw the 4 sections of K, 1, 2, and 3 going into 3 sections. Okay, that's 4 positions, right? That's 4 positions. Now, also keep in mind that this doesn't take effect for 2015, 16, and so the amount of changes that occur staffing-wise between now and a year and a half or 2 years down the road is certainly, I mean, there's no way to predict that. I know that in the last 6 weeks, our staff has changed a tremendous amount here in our district this past 6 weeks, and so it's really difficult to predict who or when people are going to retire, or who or when people are going to leave our district, or who or when people are going to ask for leaves of absence due to a multiple of reasons.
If you have any further questions on cards, please bring them forward at this point, as this is our last one. Mr. Westby's quote in the Burgers Falls Journal on September 24th states, "The school district believes it makes financial sense to do this, but also educationally for our kids." Westby said, "It's not going to negatively impact our kids in any way, shape, or form. Not replacing them means higher student-to-teacher ratio, which is a negative impact. Do you still stand behind this quote?"
I do, because of
And I would like to know why you do think that you have lost this long-term, intelligent, and hardworking support. I'm not one of those people. I'm not working long-term, nor am I intelligent or hardworking.
I'm not sure I understand it. Why do we think we've lost?
A lot of people who have been working for you for years and years to have many referendums are working against you on this referendum. And I want to know why you think that's happening.
They don't want their schools to close. I mean, that's why. I I mean, that's, and I truly, Susan, I respect that a great deal. As I started our meeting tonight, I respect that people have that passion for education in our school district. That makes this school district a great district. And so I absolutely respect their position, their opinion, and greatly appreciate the work that they've done for years in supporting our school district. No question about that.
And if I can just make a statement quickly too, because it kind of feels like it's been a little bit of stump the chump here tonight in trying to, I don't know why that people feel the need to question the integrity of the board or of Mr. Westby or of other administration. I mean, and quite honestly, because there's nothing to gain in this for any of us, other than a bunch of heartburn. I mean, sleepless nights and heartburn.
I also want to say that I've been offended by your guys' letter that if we don't want to pass this, then we are for cutting programs and for everything that you guys say.
You haven't said that at all.
So the rhetoric has been conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, but like I said, certainly nothing in it for any of us other than providing you the information, trying to get you informed so that you can make the decision that best fits your household in your situation. That's all we're trying to do.
Well, and I agree that, and I have to say, those two ways, I don't think anybody is questioning your challenging the area of the school board. I know, we're right. Questions that we have so that we can be, when we vote with confidence that we know what we're doing. So don't take it personally. I don't think anybody is questioning.
Right. Thank you.
Maya, you have a question?
My question is this, is that we talked about how many jobs are lost if we combine to one school. But as you stated before, one of our main expenses is people. So if we do have this deficit all of a sudden, then how many jobs are lost there because we can't afford to keep people around?
It's a good question, and that's what would
Then
happen.
what happens to our class size?
Right, and here's, you sense the hesitancy in my voice on this one because I know what I'm going to be accused of. If we're looking at just the elementary, okay, and knowing that we look at a district K-12 and we have programs and classes and things here at the secondary school that we would look at as well, administration, etc., the list goes on and on, okay? We did that back in 08, 09 when we had a tremendous amount of reductions. But one of the things that we would have, one of many that we would look at is that class size. You see those classes of 14 and 14? I have colleagues that say, what? You have 14 and 14? Why isn't that 28? And they're looking at me as a colleague saying, you're not managing money very well. And so in other districts, there's no question that would be one class. Now, do I support that? No. Not when we have a proposed plan that was going to be able to. Do I support 23 and 24? Absolutely. As I said before, there's not a number. So yes, there are some things that would happen if we get to that third stage. And again, I'm going to say we have really boiled away all the stuff. We have three options. One, the proposed plan that we all get to vote on. Two, an increased referendum to keep us going. Or three, starting to reduce and make those reductions across our district.
Can I say one more thing? I'm really sorry I yelled at Ms. Thompson. And I think it's become clear to me tonight, one thing that happened is when you advertised the meetings in June, I understood, and I think a lot of my friends understood, that you were gathering input from us about which option would go on the ballot first. And that at the meeting that I attended, it was so clear that
Susan, and I'll take this one, Matt, because, and we did hear you loud and clear at the meetings, but we also, as we're out and about, and we're getting phone calls at home, and when we're being stopped in the grocery store, or being stopped on the street, or wherever it might be, we're getting, I'm talking for myself at this point. So, and we had heard from a number of people, basically saying, it's absolutely the right thing to do. It should have been done a long time ago. Why haven't you thought about this before? So I mean, you know, and we bring it back and we all talk about it, and that's what our, you know, we talk about these things in the meetings. All right, how did you, what did you hear this week? Is anyone bending your ear? What are they saying? And so we do it. And yes, and when we look at these three options, and as a board, we say what impacts the kids probably the least educationally, what impacts the taxpayers that we're trying to be mindful of, the minimal amount. I think it's hard for us to look past option one.
What kind of a feeling are you getting from this group, our feeling tonight now?
Well, Stuart, I'd like to believe that it's kind of a mixed feeling, and which I should hope it would be. Thank you.
Could you elaborate a little bit on 7.5 million projections for deferred maintenance, understanding the savings from teacher reductions? How big a role did that play? What due diligence is done? Why weren't there requests for proposals or benchmarking with other districts?
On the 7.5?
Or the 7.3, the deferred maintenance that was presented for the 2023. For the 2 elements.
Just repeat that again, Brian. I didn't hear the first part.
I believe there was 7.3 million in deferred maintenance projected for the 2 elementaries.
Well, for all three facilities.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep.
The majority being in 2 elementaries. I guess I'm just looking for some clarity on what due diligence was run around that, why was there benchmarking with other districts, how did ICS formulate some of those things. Some of the items like $400 or wall covering certainly catch your eye. Just curious what due diligence was done as one of those.
From a benchmarking standpoint, I guess I would ask what,
all other similarly aged buildings around here, what experience did they have in terms of maintenance costs? How do you arrive at those? And did the board do any other independent of ICS? Did the board do any other benchmarking or due diligence regarding those?
I can tell you how the numbers were derived anyway. And again, going back to what we do, this is what we do for K-12 schools. We do a lot of facility assessments. We work with dozens of school districts in the state. And so from an ability to go through facilities, identify needs, and put costs to those accurate costs and conceptual budgets, that's what we do. From a benchmarking standpoint, I would say in general, and I can't remember if it was Darrell or the superintendent mentioned earlier, the driver for the proposal is not that these buildings are in poor condition. In fact, when you look at that total of identified maintenance need within your district, that is not a high proportion compared to what we typically see when we're looking at facilities of similar age and similar condition. Obviously, when you look at North Elementary, significant renovation work has taken place there, and there's a good share of that building that is modern. One of the biggest needs at North Elementary is the mechanical infrastructure, and that's a large portion of the identified needs at that building. With respect to the 400,000 of wall coverings, I guess that's certainly not, was that south or north? Or?
I thought that was the restate, remember?
At the north.
It's a minor detail. I was mostly interested in due diligence, not only from ICS, but also what board has done independent of that, and how they can roll that way.
So on this thing that was put in the newspaper, it says interior finishes, ceilings, flooring, and paint, 400,000.
When you look at interior finishes, and again, I don't know how much detail you want, but when we look at a facility and we look at doing an initial analysis, we break the building down by systems. And so if you can imagine yourself driving up to the facility, we look at site and grounds, and we look at building envelope, which would be roofs and wall systems and windows and exterior doors and flashings. Then we would go inside, and we would look at interior finishes. And to your point, that would include not only floors and ceilings and interior doors and hardware, casework, cabinetry, built-ins, all of those things that go into that interior finishes category. Then we look at mechanical systems, we look at electrical systems, and we look at things from a life safety or accessibility standpoint. So those are kind of how we break a building into systems, and that's what we did in this case. So that $400,000 number may have been summarized, and I haven't seen what you're looking at, but that's what that encompasses for the buildings.
Did those numbers come from local contractors?
No, they did not. Those came from us.
And that was based on what, like an area like this? Or?
We've got our cost database based on all of the projects and planning efforts we've been involved in. We compare that annually to ENR, which is Engineering News Record. There are a number of different cost indices out there.
I guess what I'm curious though is it based on an area like this, or those numbers more like a metropolitan area, or 400,000 from a rural area like this with our contractors?
They would certainly represent this area. We do work all over the state, in North Dakota, and Wisconsin, and so on. So they are certainly.
So metropolitan areas wouldn't be.
I guess I'm not following the question.
It's a database, so they're taking all the information that they have from everything. Yeah, I know the database, there's local contractors.
If you look at ENR, for instance, and again, I think we're probably taking it to the next iteration, but all of those have location and geographic factors to them. And again, not to decrease the amount of importance or the amount that this played into things, identified maintenance was not the driver for the proposed solution from the board. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think
To clarify that, in the budget projections or the balance projections, none of those current maintenance costs were included in that curve. They were separate. Were they included on a 20-year rolling basis? Or how do they fall into that?
from a calculating the annual savings, that capital cost avoidance was not factored into any of those, if that's what you're asking. So that would be above and beyond if you wanted to try to dollarize that over the term of the solution.
How much does the district budget every year for maintenance on the field? I know one time it was
For deferred maintenance, I think.
So Diane doesn't have to get up. The district has two main pots of money they get annually. One pot of money is operating capital. The other is deferred maintenance. I believe off the top of my head, and Diane's, two of those combined, deferred maintenance, operating capital each year, are total $200,000.
Please explain the difference between operating capital and deferred maintenance.
Absolutely. Deferred maintenance is a specific category that the state gives X amount of dollars based on the building age to the district. Operating capital has a building age index in it. It also has technology dollars specified in it and another $100 per pupil. So it has a couple layers in that. Operating capital is a much broader category of expenditures for schools, so that their operating capital dollars, part of that $200,000, if I'm remembering correctly, it's going to be about $152,000 is your operating capital account out of that $200,000. That can be used to purchase school buses. It can be used to purchase paint and supplies, textbooks, computers, vans. It's the broadest expenditure category that a school district has.
We use it for a lot of curriculums.
And curriculum, textbooks, all of that. And yet, as you can see, deferred maintenance, if you're going to try to patch a $7.3 million problem with $48,000 a year, it's not going to work.
Let's take it 2 steps So the deferred maintenance levy portion that he was talking about, I don't know if you're at $64 per pupil or in that range somewhere. If you look at that math, that's approximately $45,000 to $48,000 a year. That's specifically earmarked for deferred maintenance.
So if we happen to get to, there was a proposal to put money into the two south North elementaries, is that proposal, would we bond for $7.3 million, take that money and over a summer upgrade those schools and sort of have everything done in one shot and then pay for it within 20 years? Or would that be something that is then paid for and through it, this deferred maintenance?
I think when we talk about that I don't know that it would all be done in one fell swoop or like over one summer. I don't think that's how we would address that. So
we disagree on that a little bit. I would like to see, if our direction, our vision is to be a 3-campus district moving forward, then my preference, and again, I work for the board here, so I would get in trouble, but my preference is that we would do it, we'd get it done, and we're moving on. But that's... like we always would, yep.
The numbers, Diane, we have deferred maintenance, Pat had it, and you had it dead on, 49,000. The operating capital the district is getting this year is 173,000, so it went up slightly from last year.
If you pass the $7.3 million bond, we calculated that your debt service difference between the 7.3 and the 12.2 would be $400,000 annually. And ironically, you're cutting 8 staff at $375,000 annually. So would it be true or fair to say that you're building a new school on the backs of 8 certified staff when you could indeed, bond for bond, a $7.3 million bond would save you $400,000 in debt service per year? Would it not?
I had a chance to put a small little snippet together over by Pat, but of course it's pen point, it's not PowerPoint. With that being said, I think what I was trying to explain earlier was if we go down the path of the deferred maintenance bond, so if we do the $7.3 million request and pay principal and interest with that, that equals $10 million over 20 years. If we go the $12 million over the 20 years, that equals, we're going to round that up to $20 million to make the math easy. It's $19 million. So we have $10 million. Right now we're $10 million better off to do the deferred maintenance. I believe I could get everybody to say yes. The trick is that we need to collect 20 years of operating levy. So if we flip to the $20 million option before you, we need to collect 20 years of operating levy at $1 million a year. So that's $20 million. So the current option in front of you, if we're going to compare these two particular taxes side by side, is a $40 million option. If we went with a 3-campus situation, it's true that we have $10 million better off with total bond payments. However, we know as running the financial projections that the current $1 million over 20 years needs to be doubled. So that $1 million turns into a $2 million request, which is $2 million a year, which equals $40 million. So 10 plus 40 is 50 million for a deferred maintenance effort. It's 40 million for a new campus. So if you as a whole, for taxpayers in these two particular levies, are better off to the tune of $10 million for this 20-year plan.
And then at the end of 20 years, we would have a 20-year-old building in there.
Correct.
Or a 70-year-old building in,
And what loses it in the transaction, that's as easy as I can make the numbers. I apologize, it's confusing. However, you will have a different fund balance left over in both of these scenarios. You're not going to be at 1.7 million in either one of these scenarios at the end of the 20 years, but who knows what's going to happen within the 20 years. We just know that right now, it's $10 million overall better to the taxpayers. So we can, sure, I can show that. We can talk about that separately if you want later.
So are you saying then that for 20 years, that you will not come to us with another operating levy within that 20 years?
I'm saying that I am speaking as a financial consultant to the district, that the basis for the study is based on where we think enrollment is, where expenditures are going, and where we can cut and find efficiency in costs. This would be a grand goal not to have to come back to you. Is it, likelihood? Well, the history of the district is every 2 to 3 years you've been forced to run a referendum based on what has been doled out to you legislatively. So I am sure that as a financial consultant, I could not guarantee you that you wouldn't have to come back to you, the voters. But this will enable us to be more flexible in those requests down the line.
My question gets away from the money issue and focuses on the individual children. How do you think that having our children go from Kensington or Elbow Lake to Barrett and sit on a school bus for an hour in the morning is going to be beneficial to them when they could just stay where they are and stay in their community?
again, as we talked about earlier, educationally, having all of our kids in one spot to be able to plan for them. When we talk about transportation, there's two things we talk about, or think about. One is cost, certainly, and the second one is pickup times. How early do children need to get on the bus? Right now, we have students getting on the bus pretty early. Working with Palmer Bus, and again, very, very preliminary, is cost-wise, it's going to be about a wash. Right now, we have shuttle buses that are in Hoffman and Elbow Lake that come here. We could eliminate those, but we would need to add some town routes. Okay, so that's a wash there financially. Very preliminary as far as pickup times for kids would be, again, the assumption is that would be later because we don't have, according to, again, Palmer Bus, they're saying we wouldn't have what they call deadhead time with our shuttles waiting in Hoffman and waiting in Elbow Lake. We wouldn't have that. So we think that was the bus ride going to be longer for kids that are in Kensington that go to South? Yes. Are the kids going to have a longer bus ride for kids that are in Elbow Lake that go to North? Yes. But I know that I've heard pretty passionately from some parents of both Barrett and Hoffman saying our kids have been riding buses for years. Yeah.
I mean, my son has a learning disability, and it takes him a lot of focus time in the morning. So I know from experience that he needs a good bus breakfast, he needs time in the morning, and sitting on a school bus is not beneficial to him when he could be at home getting ready and prepping with what needs to be done. How is that beneficial to all other children?
All other children that do the same thing, you mean? Or I mean, again, educationally, we think that having all of our kids, all of our staff in one spot is going to, again, outlined up here earlier, the planning, the meeting their needs. So that, I mean, that we do think that's an advantage.
I guess on the busing issue, our kids got on the bus at 7 o'clock every morning, all years they went to school, and they seemed to survive nicely. And I think it made more common sense to not have to redo it and shove stuff. They could go directly where they're supposed to be instead of shuffling them back and forth. And as far as stewards worrying about the small kids or like when the older kids, well, I look around, how many of us survive the bus? And they're older too.
Oh, I was worried about it, but that just came from that ex-administrator that was worried about it.
Well, that's not an issue to me. And as far as, you know, economic development, that really isn't the school board's issue. You know, that's, I mean, you're doing your job, we're looking for the cheapest way for us to have a quality education. And I think, you know, you always hear from the opposition at meetings like this, but there's a lot of us that really are saying, you're doing the right thing, good job, keep it up, and I hope more people will tell you that.
Thank you.
Well, let me have the motor side. Getting back to your 40 million and 50 million, if 40 students on the edge of the district were to leave rather than go to the central location in Barrett, how does that affect your 40 and 50 million?
You would have to react to that accordingly with another request, but as I stated at the very end of trying to compare simplistically the 40 million and the 50 million, the $40 million, you might have a zero fund balance. Excuse me, the $50 million plan, you might have a zero fund balance, and on the $40 million plan, you might still have a $1.1 million fund balance. So it all depends on how that shakes out, but we know that just with 2 years loss of 40 kids, that's a $300,000 hit on the 18 fund balance up there. So 40 kids does have a $250,000 to $300,000 impact in 5 years. So 40 kids 10 years down the road, you probably have to triple that for impact.
It's the money that costs to operate the 3 facilities is really what adds up. That's the big pot of money that continues to grow and add up. And quite honestly, you know, we talk about building on a new school or whatever it might be. You know, we're not trying to build a Taj Mahal here. All we're creating is a vehicle that allows you or us to capture these savings annually. I mean, and if we're looking down the road and we're saying 10 years or 15 years, we're a one campus site at that point. Why would we pass up those kind of savings? I mean, if it's 10 years and we're one facility and we've passed up, you know, almost $7 million in savings just on operational cost alone. I mean, the school, the building is just a vehicle to capture the savings, people.
There's one thing that hasn't been talked a lot about here, and that's the educational advantage. And in being in the position of the Dean of Students for the last 3 years, I've learned a lot of things about what we need to have a great program. And I think you see a lot of that within what we're trying to do right now. In our 5th and 6th grade, the rotation class, what you did here, is that they go to science, they go to art, they go to industrial tech, but they also keep one class back and they split them into a group of 8 people. And they teach them math and reading, and their scores show. The one thing that we are trying to do right now, and today we had to get 4 subs so we could get our teachers here to talk, and if we were in one building, they could do that every day. But right now, we have to hire people so we can get our teachers there. But we are doing what are called PLCs, which is kind of what the 5th and 6th grade are doing right now. If we had the one building,
you would have that opportunity to do those rotations with all grade levels. Now, if you want to talk about money, great. If you want to talk about education and improving our students, I believe this is what we need to do. Now, last Saturday I had a conversation in an AARP class with two people. One was from Alec, one was from Wendell, but lives in Alec. Now, why did he move? All right? But he said, how's it going to go? I said, it doesn't look good right now. Then we asked about the Alec referendum, or their bond issue, and said, the guy that was teaching said it took us 4 times to pass it. My question to him was, what would it cost you the first time compared to this time? And he said the first time it would have been 42 million, it is now 88 million. Now, do we want to wait and see if we can keep these buildings open? And do we want to try to put a tax burden of $400 if that is the amount extra on our people in our towns?
That school in Allen is significantly outdated. They didn't even have enough plugins to operate a computer lab.
We don't have enough plugins in
Now, we
Allen.
don't have that problem.
That's true.
Yeah, they do.
In the elementary class?
So, in hearing that conversation Saturday, I had a different view on where I stood. So if we want to look at financially, what is going to be our tax impact in 3 years? We have a lot of ifs here.
Any other questions? We've almost spent 3 hours together.
Again, I'm just going to say thank you for coming. Thank you for your passion for your kids, our kids. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time, folks.